Thank you very much. Okay, Mary, and listen, Mike and I and some of our other club members have had the opportunity to hear Mary speak. And I tell you what, she's also an outstanding speaker. Mary, by the way, I guess we can't do that. You usually just kind of bounce around the stage. Is this going to be okay? Okay, thank you. Mary Sound.
Thank you so much for the honor and privilege to speak to you all here today. I have a great love for the military. Since the Revolutionary War, every generation of my family has served in some branch of the military, and it is a great honor to be here. My grandfather was a Marine, a mechanic, and I'm very proud to be here today. I'd like to start us off with a story. Imagine back to December 20th, 1943, on a bitterly cold day in Germany. The Bremen mission, an Allied agenda to destroy a German aircraft production facility, has been successful, but at what cost? Staggering through the skies is a tattered B-17 flying fortress, fondly named Ye Olde Pub. The crew's bright hopes on their first mission have been brutally dashed. They are sorely wounded, and those able to stand struggle to keep the plane in the air. Charles Brown, the young American pilot, begins to fear that he will never, ever make it home again. Bullets rain all around him, and his tail gunner lays dead. Suddenly, another plane appears behind him, and his heart sinks into his boots. It's a Messerschmitt Bf-109, and the pilot locks eyes with Brown across the cockpit. His thoughts race. Are these the last eyes he will ever look into? The face of the enemy against whom he and his friends have been fighting against? So far away from home. And yet, to his astonishment, he sees no retaliation from the opposing plane. And desperately, he throws the plane into full throttle while this other plane flies alongside him. Suddenly, just as they reach the ocean, the German pilot salutes and peels away. Brown and his surviving crew miraculously make it back home. 43 years later, Charles Brown recalls this strange story and sets out on a hunt to find this unknown German pilot. After 4 years of vain searching through countless records, he finally writes a letter to a certain newsletter recounting this story. A few months later, he receives a letter and response saying simply, "I was the one." The two pilots connect and share their memories over the incident. The German pilot was named Franz Stigler, who at the time of the incident was an ace with 27 victories. He had been refueling when he caught sight of the dilapidated bomber, but upon catching up with it, he realized the desperate state of the crew. The words of one of his own commanding officers, Gustav Rudel, came back to him. Quote, "If I ever see or hear of you shooting at a man in a parachute, I will shoot you myself," end quote. Stigler commented, quote, "To me, it was just like they were in a parachute. I saw them and I couldn't shoot them down," end quote. Instead, Stigler tried to persuade Brown to land or divert to be tended to. However, Brown didn't understand, so Stigler flew in close formation to the bomber so the German anti-aircraft would not shoot the bomber down. He escorted it to the coast till they reached open ocean. Assured that the bomber was finally out of German airspace, Stigler departed. He informed his superiors that he had taken care of the bomber over the ocean. After the war, Brown went to college before returning to the newly established U.S. Air Force, where he served for over a decade before becoming an inventor. Stigler moved to Canada and became a successful businessman. Each man had families, both with 2 children. Their story became famous, and they were both honored. Over the next 2 decades of their reuniting, Charles Brown and Franz Stigler, an American and a German, went from enemies to close friends. They passed away within a few months of each other in 2008. With this story in mind, we reflect that we always long for heroes. We marvel at a flowing cape and a shiny smile that saves the day. We admire stars who dazzle us with impossible talent. We dream of a future when we too will change the world. The revere of heroes among today's generation is not uncommon, but what they are promoting is cause for concern. Athletes, actors, musicians, influencers, and fictional characters have captured the hearts and minds of the younger generation. The celebrities that we glorify champion their lifestyles, their tastes, and even their voting choices. While the role models of today are those who steal the screen, the greatest heroes all around us often go unappreciated and unnoticed. Over 17 veterans are estimated to die by suicide every single day. And in 2020 alone, 6,146 veterans took their own lives. Most of you here today, as we've seen, are in fact veterans or have family or friends in the armed forces. You who served your country with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, have you ever felt like no one valued your sacrifice? Have you ever asked the question, where do I go from here? Here on Veterans Day, we pose the question, why is it important to honor our veterans? And how do we honor them? First, we will gain a foundational understanding of our veterans and the founding of Veterans Day, then evaluate the current state of our military today, and finally see the greatest battle in our age in which we are all participants. To begin our quest to answer this question of why we honor our veterans, we must travel back to the very beginning of our nation. 248 years ago, during the uncomfortable summer heat in Pennsylvania State Hall, our founding fathers also signed their lives away and warred against a tyrannical force for the rights of their posterity. Our founding fathers held in high esteem and appreciation the military, without which our nation would have never existed. George Washington, commander of the Revolutionary Army, reflected that, quote, "The Army, formed under the most unfavorable circumstances, has performed achievements under the direction of Providence unparalleled in the annals of warfare," end quote. John Adams, firebrand and chief instigator of the American Revolution, indicated that, quote, "The soldier must be cherished in peace as in war, and all necessary provision should be made for those who exposed their lives for the public good," end quote. This ultimate dedication to our country has always been cherished and foundational to our American ideals. Perhaps most telling is the words penned by Francis Scott Key on September 14th, 1814. While watching the British assault on Fort McHenry, he penned words that would compel emotion in millions of American citizens for centuries by being enshrined in our national anthem. Words that we just sang, describing America as the land of the free and the home of the brave. Or as the pastor so poignantly put it, this is the land of the free because of the brave. But we must clarify the distinctions between our multiple holidays that honor those who served in the armed forces. In summary, on Armed Services Day, celebrated on the third Saturday of every May, we honor those who are still serving. On Memorial Day, the last Monday of every May, we honor the spirit of those who paid that ultimate sacrifice, even if they are no longer with us. But today, on Veterans Day, we observe and respect on November 11th of every year all who have served. Veterans Day originates from Armistice Day on 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when an armistice was declared between the Allied nations and Germany of World War I. In 1954, this day was permanently established as Veterans Day to honor all who have served, especially during a period of wartime. Now that we know what Veterans Day is, let us discern what distinguishes a veteran. What makes a veteran who they are? Whether for the draft, adventure, or patriotism, veterans left behind their lives to march into an unknown future. They are those who sacrificed their present for someone else's future to honor their past. Though they may not have understood the speeches of Congress, they fought because they loved their country, their family, and their tribe of comrades. Veterans that may not flaunt fashion like a celebrity or possess powers like a superhero, but they retain qualities of character far greater than any who strut the screen can profess. Veterans do not need to fight in war to be respected and appreciated. All veterans know the heart of honor, the dedication of discipline, the rigor of responsibility, and the long suffering of love. They understand the fight for family, the faith of friendship, the sacrifice of selflessness, and the woe of war. Most importantly, veterans understand the sanctity of life and respect for all cultures, whether they have no badges of honor or many. All veterans are bestowed with unmeasurable achievements and unquestionable qualities of character. Veterans are important because they are the heroes that our generation so desperately needs. And yet, how are veterans perceived today? We, the people of the younger generation, think of war and its victims as a distant apparition, or something that can be disregarded by clicking restart on a video game. We have never known rations, fear of bombs, the war machine. Most of us have never watched a loved one leave for war without knowing if they would ever return. In the bliss of the 21st century, we have turned our hopes to the heroes of Hollywood, our virtues to viral videos, and our time to the tyranny of TikTok. I often observe my fellow generation sucked into their screens and rarely lifting their heads and their eyes to look into the eyes of those who have truly experienced this world. We have been swept into the embrace of worldly perception. We are living on the fumes of the fires started by our fathers. Who we have wished to be is who we have become, in thought and in character. Now, instead of championing the virtues of respect and discipline that binds together all military in a bond of brotherhood, regardless of color, of creed, or of culture, the military has become scorned by our own nation and by the rest of the world, fueled by political objectives and cultural propaganda. It is no surprise that the military has missed their recruiting goals by 15,000 soldiers, prompting them to lower the requirements for eligibility. But does this fix the problem? It is no wonder that national surveys indicate 2 out of 3 Americans cannot pass our citizenship test. We often hear how we must open our minds to the depravity of ancient civilizations, all while we turn a blind and scornful eye to the virtues of our past and to those who fought to defend it. We, the American people, are dismayed, not only for the generations of the future, but for the sacrifices of countless people and the hope and struggle of preserving peace and prosperity for their posterity. dreams now endangered on the brink of rising distrust and disorder. We reflect that President John F. Kennedy warned us that, quote, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." Having a holiday to celebrate Veterans Day does not really mean much if we do not celebrate veterans ourselves. In fact, it impacts who will serve in the future by how we treat who have served today. George Washington, the father of our nation, commented, quote, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any future wars, regardless of their justification, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive veterans of earlier wars are treated and appreciated," end quote. Amen. How have our veterans been treated in recent history? With the tragic scorning of Vietnam veterans who returned home. What can be more terrible than despising men who answered the call of their nation and gave all that they had for the decisions of people who never faced the consequences of their actions? This must not be the end of honorable military service in America. Since in this nation's history, since 1776, over 41 million people have served during periods of wartime. And while there are almost 4.5 million brave soldiers buried in Veterans Affairs cemeteries. Freedom is never free. It always comes with a price. The price they paid was not in vain, nor is the war over. As said by President Ronald Reagan, quote, "Veterans know better than anyone else the price of freedom, for they've suffered the scars of war. We can offer them no better tribute than to protect what they have won for us. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction," unquote. In the Korean War, around 1.8 million American soldiers served, and some 54,246 never returned. In the Vietnam War, about 2.7 million Americans served, and around 58,220 Americans died in conflict. And the combined Middle Eastern conflicts since 9/11, around 3 million Americans have served, and around 7,400 have died so far. Now we pose the question that was asked by a very good friend of mine, Air Force and Vietnam veteran Lieutenant Colonel Timothy Pasquarelli. Why can we not start at the end from the beginning? How many more casualties do we truly wish to add to this list? The lesson that we can learn from Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler is that we are not born enemies, we are made into enemies, and war does not often have to be the first option. 248 years after the founding of our nation, you are the next generation of veterans. Your predecessors did not give up, and neither must you. While your service to the military may have ended, your service to your nation is not over. Instead of guns, we need grandparents. Instead of missiles, we long for ministers. Instead of tanks, we desire teachers. Our country is not defined by the government or politicians. Our country is defined by the spirit of the American people. The spirit to serve, the spirit to protect, the spirit to stand for what we believe in. It is this spirit that we honor today on Veterans Day. As said by President Calvin Coolidge, quote, "Reverence for the dead should not be divorced from reverence for the living." If we hold those who have gone before us in high estimation, it will be reflected in our conduct toward those who are still with us It would be idle to place a wreath on the grave of the dead and leave ungarlanded the brow of the living. Our devotion to the memory of those who have served their country in the past is but a symbol to the devotion of those who are serving their country in the present, end quote. We ask one final time, why is a veteran important? A veteran is someone who fights with the enemy so you can be at peace with your neighbor. A veteran is someone who is trained to defend so you can chase your dreams. A veteran is someone who goes where they are told so you may go where you will. A veteran is someone who is always vigilant so you may rest at peace. A veteran is someone who held back their emotions so that you can freely express your own. A veteran is someone who has been there for you perhaps before you have even come into existence. The question now is, what are you to the veteran? Can you visit them? Can you listen to their sacrifice? Can you volunteer and come alongside them? Can you lend a helping hand? Bring their dedication out again to the main place of culture? Can you invite them who are lonely to your Thanksgiving meal? Can you help the homeless veteran on the side of the street? Can you respect and can you care for them? My friends and my brave heroes who gave it your all. What is a veteran? A veteran is someone who cares for you without ever knowing you, seeing you or meeting you, so that you can be proud to be an American. Veterans, you will lay down your lives for this country, thinking of us without ever meeting us. The real question is, will we think of you? Will we honor the spirit in which you served? Will we work our hardest to ensure that if at all possible, we can start at the end from the beginning? I'd like to end with the often quoted lines of the famous World War I poem that's so poignantly relevant to us today. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Thank you.